Ma'am, it's all yours.
Can you all hear me now?
Coming
Okay.
through loud and clear to me, ma'am.
All right, so just to let folks know they're being recorded, so just to give people a heads up. The other thing, I wanted to thank everybody for joining today's discussion. We have some good presenters here today to talk about some things that are front and center as we roll out more work across the state to address clean water. And so I'm glad to have on board today Robert Booz, Deputy Executive Director for Project Management with the Pennsylvania Infrastructure Authority, and Carl Brown, Executive Secretary of State Conservation Commission. And both gentlemen will be speaking about their respective programs today. So just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up of where NRCS is at this point in time, and to give you a little bit of a look into what things are happening for this year. First, I want to thank everyone who was able to participate in the strategic planning focus group sessions. I think many of you were invited to participate in those sessions, and I certainly appreciate the feedback. As a leadership team, we need to discuss that next week, and there were some good suggestions in there, so we will take those back and look to make some improvements. The strategic plan, as we have discussed, will be for take us into 2027. So the next thing to kind of give you a little bit of an update on is where are things within NRCS for fiscal year 2023. We start our fiscal year in October 1st, so everybody is aware. At this point in time, we have about 25 million available for our EQIP base program. That is not including initiatives. So folks are familiar with the National Water Quality Initiative. Folks may be familiar with the Golden Wing Warbler Initiative. The 25 million of base EQIP assistance is for just EQIP itself. That will go out to our local field teams. And what I've told our field teams, first off, is that they can expect a similar allocation to what they had last year. The expectation is that our work is going to be primarily done and contracts to be obligated by the end of June. We have to have over 70% of our contracts obligated. That means we can't wait until the end of the fiscal year like we had this year. Not only did I have gray hair, but we had a lot of people. And Chris Sigmund's here today, and he has no hair from it, I can tell you. So, it was a lot of give and take, and the chief of NRCS has asked us to prep for next year. Next year, NRCS is anticipating getting double the funding. And that's kind of insightful in that we'll be getting twice the amount of money for climate smart and nitrogen loss reduction practices. But we'll also be partnering with local conservation districts as they are getting what Carl's going to refer to today as ACAP funding. So that is state cost share money. So I think we have a lot of good conversations to talk about that as a committee today, and I hope we have some engaging conversation on that. With just as what we have been carrying the message going forward, and I think Carl and I have talked nearly twice a week on this going forward. We are currently having our local working groups meet at the local level. So you should be getting invitations from local district conservationists. If you are not, please let us know. But folks will be out there meeting the district conservationists, I hope, in partnership with the conservation district managers. We'll be working together to establish priority areas, establish a way to look at at Equip in partnership with ACAP. That has been our encouragement. We have some great new maps that are out there for, and we've told our district conservationists that all local working groups will need to be convened and minutes to us by December 31st. Okay, so that's something to do this first quarter. So they'll not only be talking about the $25 million in equip funding, but they'll be talking about, you know, the use of state money, probably. They'll also be talking about conservation stewardship program, which we are happy to report is going to be about another $10 million a year program. So CSP will be about 10 million. And we're hoping to grow that. We have a new assistant state conservationist for programs, Jared Shippey. Jared's on today. And we'll have him introduce himself, but he can push CSP like nobody's business. So we're excited about that. Just wanted to let folks know about some other exciting things that have been happening. I had the opportunity to serve on a team for the Chief Cosby to look at payment schedules. As many of you know, the payment schedule has been an issue for us with the pandemic. Our costs were not real-time costs. They were sometimes they could not take into account consideration for geographic areas, and the rates were sometimes too low. Chief Cosby has not only revisited, and we have an economist, Mary Lynn Marks, now on board, as well as Tim Peters and Dan Ludwig. They have all been meeting to get the most up-to-date costs to put into the payment schedule. But also, the chief has made a decision, and we had the ability to put through new policy last week that allows for payment schedule changes in the event that costs are exceeding what, and I would say excessive. I would say at least 15 to a 20% increase in costs above what the payment schedule rate is posted on the website. So I saw a lot in the strategic planning session that we needed to be more nimble and flexible with payment schedules. You know, case in point, we maybe saw fence posts be at $8 a post, and they were, latest we saw was $24 a post. So things have, you know, severely increased, and we, within NRCS, our chief has allowed us to be flexible with that. So we will have the ability, we will lock into payment rates for contracts so that producers know what their outlays will be. But in the event that something happens again, God, I hope not, like a pandemic or supply chain issues or other things, we will have the ability within the contract year to make those changes to the payment schedule. So I think that takes a major focus that was part of actually a strategic planning process, and I think that addresses it. So very happy to be part of that discussion. So as you see things, if you are a person that's working out in the field and you're seeing that, you know, prices are coming back and our costs are not reflective, please get those to me, to Tim Peters or to Dan Ludwig, and we'll make sure to look and analyze that. On another, I did speak to you about meeting with local working groups. So we have some new maps that Yuri Plowden is here today, and her team is working on. They are working on looking at maps that not only look at existing water quality data, but look at field condition data. So the new maps that the local working groups will have that I think is of interest to many partners out there is our soil vulnerability index maps that look at practices on a field by field basis. And if there are a system of practices out there that avoid, control, and trap nutrients and sediment, it's going to tell us that you can move to another field. And to look at it holistically, when we bring all those fields together, if we have a majority of the areas addressed with that avoid control trap practice, because it's bringing in all of the NRCS practice data, we can move on to other priority areas. And so, case in point, I think I was looking at York and Adams County, and at one point in time, we had some areas around Gettysburg that were high priority. We had, as NRCS, had put them in as high priority areas. It is now telling us move away from that, move up kind of near the Dillsburg area, closer to the Dillsburg area. So some very real changes will be happening. It's looking at the soils, what soils can take, what soils weather. It's taking the intellect of what the soil is and the practices, combining those two and saying, is this enough of a practice to address this resource concern? Yes or no? So hope that you all see those maps. Hope that you take those into consideration as we work on the local working group. And with that said, I'm going to be quiet now and turn the presentation over to Robert Boos. Robert, are you out there?
I sure am. My apologies. I was having difficulties with the link. So, but yes, thank you for your patience.
And I believe that Tim Kinney has all of the presentations, those who have given him presentations ahead of time. So he can work the slides for you. So you don't need to worry about that if you prefer. So.
All right. Well, I will try it this way here. Just let me rearrange some things. And we'll add a face to the voice for you. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. My name's Robert Boos. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for Project Management with the Pennsylvania Infrastructure and Investment Authority. And next slide. And really what we do is we fund clean water projects. That's the core of our mission. If it has any type of involvement with clean water in some way or shape, it's typically something we can fund. Next slide. Essentially what PennBest is we manage the state revolving fund for the Commonwealth. And for those that might not be familiar with that, essentially what it is it's a fund that has been set up. And as it's capitalized through grants from EPA, as well as some revenue bonds, some Marcellus Shale fee funds, Growing Greener funds. And as money comes into the fund, we loan it out. And as that principal and interest is repaid, then the fund grows and it increases in size. And then we finance more projects. And as that principal and interest is paid back, it recycles through and we fund more projects. And over the years, it was initially anticipated to be a 20-year program with going for about $2 billion. And we've just reached our 34th year. And we've exceeded 10.7 billion and likely will hit the $11 billion mark yet next year. So we're excited about that. Next slide. A lot of times I get asked, what can we fund? Who can fund? Who's eligible? And there's a lot of misconception out there that we can only fund municipal entities or government entities, and that's not just the case. We can fund and finance public or governmental units. We've done everything from individual farms to individual companies, folks doing brownfields redevelopment, homeowners to government entities, nonprofits, authorities, and the like. But the important thing about this is really any applicant is typically eligible. There are some very few exceptions, and that is typically fellow state agencies that have a line item in the general fund or as part of the fiscal code. We are prohibited from replacing those funds. So aside from other fellow state agencies, typically we can fund just about anybody. Next slide. This will kind of give you a rundown of where we are today. Like I said, we're at about $10.7 billion. We've been around since 1988 in our 34th year, and we've funded just in excess of 4,500 projects. You can see the breakdown here. Obviously, the bulk of our work to date has been in the drinking water and wastewater areas. We've expanded into brownfields, non-point source, acid mine drainage, stormwater. And we also have a program through the Pennsylvania Housing and Finance Agency for repair of on-lot systems, sewer lines, laterals, as well as new connections to address malfunctioning on-lot systems. Currently, our budget this year is $800 million. I'll be talking a little bit later here in the presentation about additional funding we've been getting starting this year from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And over these next 5 years, we're really going to see that 800 million budget increase to be around about $1 billion a year each year for the next 5 years. To date, we've been funding every project that is technically and administratively ready to go since 2015. And we're really in a healthy position. Our fund is not leveraged heavily. A lot of state funds are heavily leveraged. They don't have additional capacity. Fortunate for us, we are not a heavily leveraged program. And as a result, if we would get an influx of projects where there was a new emerging contaminant or something that needed to be addressed, we could very easily go out, and the program's set up to do so, to go out on the bond market, get a revenue bond, and increase our funding capacity to more if the need presents itself. So the big message about all of that is we're in a very healthy position today, and we have the fund set up for tomorrow and subsequent years, such that we can meet the needs for the citizens of Pennsylvania for clean water with reasonable and affordable financing. Next slide, please. This is just kind of a quick map of the state and all the projects that we've funded to date. We've funded projects in every county of the Commonwealth. Obviously, once you get around the population centers like Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, around Chester, Lehigh Valley, down through Dauphin and Harrisburg, you're obviously going to see more dots indicating more infrastructure projects. Obviously, wherever there's more folks, there's a need for more infrastructure. Once you get above Interstate 80, where it's much more rural, much more forested, there's just less population, and also as a result, not the need for as much infrastructure. And this just gives you a real quick distribution of our funding to date and historically. Next slide. We do answer to a board. We do have a board of directors. Our board of directors meet quarterly. Actually, we just had a meeting this morning for our October 19th meeting. And the reason we meet quarterly is we want to make sure that we're making the funding available in a timely fashion for folks. We don't want them to sit around waiting a year to see if they get funding, and if they don't, how they're going to fill the funding gap. If for some reason you're not ready to go at one cutoff in one board meeting, you know there's another one next quarter. So it's really set up to be accommodating to potential applicants to get projects approved and moving in a timely fashion. We are a construction ready program, so you do have to have all your environmental clearances, permits, authorization, land use commitments, everything signed off on prior to coming to Penvest for funding. And the reason we do that is essentially we want to make sure that the money's being utilized and put into the ground as quickly as possible. Doesn't help if you have a bunch of funded projects that sit on the shelf and don't move forward, and that money's tied up. So Penvest has always been a construction ready program to help folks move forward when they have their authorizations in hand. Next slide. Penvest is a web-based system. We've been electronic and essentially a virtual environment since 2010, well in advance of the pandemic. And the reason we went to a web-based system really was we just ran out of room, and folks that worked at the agency had foresight to go an electronic route. We do have a portal, and we accept applications electronically. Projects are reviewed electronically. We do funds disbursement, repayments, everything's done electronically, all the settlement documents, and it really allows and accommodates folks that work differently. If, say, you have a municipal official that is part-time but has a full-time job, they can come into the system in the evening, see where things are at, or work on the application. Sometimes folks, whether it be a consulting engineer, will be working outside of normal business hours. Essentially, our portal's open and available 24/7 to really be available to folks to meet their needs and what they may need accommodation for based on their time schedule. Next slide, please. Might have gone the other way. We need to go forward there. I think we're on slide like 8. Yes, 9. Thank you. Essentially, Penvest is the bank. We have cooperating agencies that provide assistance for implementing the overall program. The biggest supporter and partner for us is the Department of Environmental Protection. They essentially act as our technical consultants. They look at all the engineering, permits, environmental clearances, make sure that the project that proposed is going to deliver those clean water benefits. We also have the Department of Community and Economic Development partnered with us. They look at for job creation and those economic impacts that projects can have on a community. And then essentially Penvest is doing the processing of the applications and the financial capacity analysis and really acting as the bank when it comes to projects. But collectively as a group, we work cooperatively to implement all aspects of the projects in the program. Next slide, please. This is a real quick outline of the process for projects. The first thing we like to do is make sure that folks sit down with our area project specialists, and really we call it a planning consultation just to get everyone on the board, same page, make sure everyone understands what the project scope is, what clearances might need to be done, what meeting they might be anticipating to attend or participate in. And our project specialists are really there to facilitate applicants' submission, as well as going through the program clear through completion of construction. Once a planning consultation is done, essentially like any other electronic portal, you register, you get an account, you're basically filling out electronic forms. And as part of the application, when it's complete, you do a formal submission. We actually then start our administrative review of those applications, as well as it's done simultaneously. You're essentially submitting your application in one spot, but DEP, DCED, Penvest, we're all going into that central location and conducting our reviews simultaneously. Once a project is deemed technically and administratively ready to go, we'll recommend it to our board for approval, assuming they approve a funding offer. Those are issued electronically at that point in time. An applicant has an opportunity to look at the funding offer, what the terms and conditions may be, and can make a decision on whether they want to accept that funding offer or not. Assuming they do accept, then the project goes out to bid. And once we get the bids in hand, we really look to close and do the settlement documents based off of bid costs. If for some reason a project comes in over estimates and it's high, they can come in and request an increase. Once all that's worked out, then we essentially close and settle on the actual dollars based on those bid contracts and documents. Once that's settlement's completed, project moves on to construction. Once construction's complete and it's inspected and signed off on, then you enter repayment mode of the final amortization of a project, and that's done electronically as well. Next slide, please. One of the great benefits about Penvest is we have competitive terms. We're below market interest rates. Our interest rates range currently right now between 1% and I think 2.174 or 173, essentially between 1 and 2%. That does fluctuate a little bit based on the annual unemployment rate, but for the most part, we're going to be somewhere between 1 and 2.5%. Based on every millions of dollars that a person might borrow, this is just showing the impact of a competitive rate. You're obviously going to be paying less interest costs in these scenarios when utilizing the Penvest funding. Next slide. Another thing we like to point out to folks is the impact of inflation. Essentially, a project's never going to be cheaper than it is today. And the longer you wait to implement a project, the more it's going to cost just with inflation alone. This is just a quick breakdown of how $1 million, what it's going to cost tomorrow, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, just by waiting to implement a project. So one of the reasons why we point this out to folks is often we hear the G word. Folks primarily want grant and might not be interested in pursuing low interest loan, but we really try and educate folks on the savings that are realized, even if it is a low interest loan. It's not free money, but it's about as close as you can get with interest rates between 1% and 2%. And just as we've seen recently with price escalation, supply issues, we've really seen how costs of projects have gone up just in the last 2 years. And essentially, you might not get a grant to implement a project, but you're still realizing significant savings by doing it sooner than later when you have those infrastructure needs in a community. Next slide. One of the biggest questions we get asked is, how do we come up with our funding determinations? And I'm going to go through that here in a minute. Essentially, Penvest, you're applying for financing. Some folks will contact us and say, how do I apply for grant? How do I get the grant dollars? Well, we are primarily a revolving loan program with low interest loans. We do have some grant dollars that we do work into projects where there's a hardship consideration given. And essentially, we have a financial capacity analysis that we do. And this is outlining and detailing how we do that. Essentially, we're looking at a target rate of somewhere between 0.5% and 1.5% of the median household income. And that's weighted based on a variety of socioeconomic factors. More affluent communities, stronger financial capable communities are going to be closer to 1.5%. More distressed communities are going to be closer to 0.5% of median household income. And that's how we determine the target rate. Once we have that target rate, then we look at the impact of a project on the residential user rate. If the resulting rate on the residents is going to be greater than what our formula says it should be, then we look at adding some reducing to a 1%, we're adding some grant dollars in to get people down to that target rate. That's when we start extending terms or adding those and utilizing those grant dollars. We look at if you're above that target rate as a result of a project, you're then at that point in time given hardship consideration. We're essentially trying to equitably distribute the funds across the Commonwealth where it's going to have the most impact. We look at the whole scope of user area when looking at the affordability. So, and I'm just being arbitrary in numbers as I give this example. You could have the city of Philadelphia that's 500,000 people. And within that population, if we awarded, say, a $5 million grant, the impact with that many users is really going to be pennies a month. And it's not a significant impact. But on the other hand, you could have a small community up in Potter County where, as a result of a project, they would be seeing their rates increase by $1,000 a year. And that's where we tend to use the grant dollars, is when it's going to have the most significant impact to help projects that otherwise not be implemented. And that's really what the whole purpose of this affordability analysis is to really get folks to that target rate so that a community in one area of the state is looked at equitably compared to another community in the other area of the state. There's no guarantees that we can get folks to that target rate based on what our formula describes. However, if we don't, then folks may need to leverage some other programs, other grant sources to get to that target rate. But at the end of the day, we are primarily a low interest loan program. Next slide, please. Now, this slide's really getting into the most recent Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Essentially, Penvest is going to be seeing some additional silos of funding as outlined here. We're under the drinking water. We're seeing an additional program for emerging contaminants. That's primarily focused on PFAS, PFOA projects, commonly referred to as forever chemicals, or main component firefighting foams. There are areas in the state that have public water, groundwater sources that are contaminated with this. And this federal funding has provided 100% principal forgiveness loan, which is essentially acts as a grant to address those contaminated sites. In addition, you're seeing the additional amount of dollars being provided to increase our existing programs for drinking water. We also have a lead service line program as a result of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, as well as some additional supplemental funds, as well as emerging contaminants under the clean water side too. All said, we're getting about an additional $240 million each year over the next 5 years. And that's in addition to our existing budget and our revolving fund that we're implementing now. So right now is an ideal time to access financing over these next 5 years. This is going to be the program that is going to be being implemented nationwide through other state revolving programs. And there's not going to be another program coming tomorrow for the foreseeable future. So if folks have a project, they really need to be giving some serious consideration over accessing the availability of these funds now over the next 5 years, as opposed to waiting down the road. Next slide, please. Another program we have is our homeowner sewage program. This is implemented through the Pennsylvania Housing and Finance Agency. We're essentially funding the program in the background, but it's going through the banks that PHFA utilizes. And here, if a homeowner is looking to address a malfunctioning on-lot system, they can contact one of PHFA's banks, asked to apply for the loan. Essentially, it's a 1.75% interest rate over 20 years, up to a maximum of $25,000. The program can also provide funds for a first-time connection into an existing residential structure or lateral replacements. These are and can be costly improvements that homeowners need to make that might not have the available cash in hand. And by providing financing over 20 years, we're looking to help provide reasonable access to funds to address these environmental and public health hazards that can occur at an individual homeowner's location. Next slide, please. This is a new program for us. It's called the Small Projects Program. We essentially asked our board for approval to allow staff to approve projects up to a maximum of $500,000 or less for a total project cost not to exceed $1 million. Essentially, we're using what's referred to as state funds. So a lot of the federal requirements that can apply to our federal source funds don't apply to this program. And it allows folks to apply quickly, a quick turnaround, get staff approval. The caveat to it is that it is all low interest loan monies. And our goal is to make sure that once receiving a complete and administratively and technically complete application is to get approval on the street within 2 weeks of receiving that application. So if a community has an immediate need to address something that falls within this cost category, they can apply to us directly without having to wait for another board meeting. If they want to be given hardship consideration for potential grant dollars, nothing prevents them from applying to our traditional program and maintain those eligibilities. This is just an option for folks to access maybe some smaller dollar amounts in a more quick, timely fashion to address maybe some smaller issues that might be significant in a community. Next slide. This is also a fairly new program. It's our programmatic financing. We found and did an analysis that we were primarily funding, bulk of our work was being done for projects between like the $2 and $3 million, $4 million range. But we found we weren't really helping the real small size projects, nor the large projects that might be the 30, 40, 50, $70 million plus type projects. So our small projects was to address the smaller end. Our programmatic financing or ProFi program is really to address those on the large side. If you have a community that has a capital improvement plan, and they're looking to expend funds each year over, say, 2, 3, 4 years, they can actually come and get financing for the entirety of a series of projects. So instead of Penvest just funding by a project by project basis, this provides an opportunity for them to take chunks out of their capital improvement plan. You could have multiple projects going on simultaneously and basically are getting approval for all of those projects up front, but then implementing them in phases. So you might have 2 or 3 projects that are part of phase 1. You have all your authorizations in place for that phase 1. You can move forward with that. And then while you're working on phase 1, you can be working on getting the approvals for phase 2. Once you have those approvals in place, then we'll release those additional dollars for phase 2, likewise for phase 3. So it really helps folks lock in the interest rate, make sure those funds are available for the entirety of a series of projects, as opposed to just coming in on a project by project basis. And we call that our Pro-Fi program. Next slide, please. Another program we've recently implemented is you can access testing, free testing for lead in drinking water at schools and child care facilities. If there's a school or child care facility within the Commonwealth and they would like to have some testing completed, all they need to do is contact us and we'll set them up with a consultant that we've retained through an RFP contract. And they'll come out, do that testing, get the results, and find out if there's an issue there. And if there is an issue, opportunities to address that. There is going to be dollars available to do some remediation, like replacing those water fountains that might be in schools for children under the age of 6 or childcare facilities. And we're waiting on the availability of those funds. Guidance is supposed to come out yet sometime, I believe, in November of this year, and we'll have more details on that. But the big takeaway here is to help those that might be the most vulnerable as it relates to lead. There is a free testing program here to have the water tested within those buildings to see if there are, say, lead lines that are causing an issue for those dispensing locations for drinking water in a system. Next slide. The face of Penvest is really our project specialist. They're listed here. They're on our website as well with their contact information. These are the folks that are going out working with communities or individuals and companies and fostering them through the process of accessing our funding and implementing a project utilizing our funding. They're the ones that will answer questions, help get you through maybe any hurdles or impediments, and really are a wealth of information that can help the process go smoothly and avoid any potential bumps that could occur in the road. And this is really the first line of contact for Penvest for these areas and regions. And their whole sole purpose and job really is to be that resource to facilitate and help people access the funding. Next slide. This is just a snapshot of our webpage. Again, we are a virtual agency. We do everything through our electronic portal. All the latest information and updates we do is located here at our website. We also have a Facebook page, but there's always something new. We just recently updated our mapping tool that's on our website. You can see where projects have been awarded, whether they fall in environmental justice areas, if they're a disadvantaged community. You can sort by legislative district, a whole variety of things of projects that are approved. And there's always something changing, being modified or being updated here at our programs. Because we want to make sure that we're functioning and staying current and providing a resource to folks to access the funds and also for others to know where the funds are going. It's important that folks see where the funds are going, where they're making a difference, the impact they're having on which communities, and it's important to also demonstrate the proper use of those funds. Next slide. We have a Facebook page. Feel free to join us there. Often we'll use that to promote upcoming seminars, locations where we're at or speaking. Also, we'll post success stories because folks might see a project that they may be considering and want to speak with a nearby adjacent community and say, well, how'd you do that? If you could do it differently, what might you do differently? But you really can see the most current and up-to-date projects that are being implemented and finished through posts on our Facebook site. Next slide. I think that's gonna, oh, other way. Yep, I thought that was the last slide. So I appreciate your time. I know I just did kind of a very high level of what we're doing here at Penvest, the funds that are available, the new federal money that's coming through the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and really how to get a hold of us. If nothing else, know that all of our contact information is here either in this slide or on our website. And if any partners or folks have questions, just please reach out to us. We want to make sure people have good answers. And if we're able to partner with other funding sources, we can do that very well, as make sure that we're all working towards that same goal of improving the infrastructure within the Commonwealth. So with that, I've said a lot. I said it quickly, I think. Tried to save some time. Happy to answer questions, but can also be available post this presentation if you have questions. So thank you for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today.
Robert, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Do we have any questions for Robert?
Denise, there's nothing in the chat.
Okay, does anybody have any questions that they'd like to address to Robert? Certainly
Hi,
very good information. Oh,
Sorry. Hi, this is Katie Ombalski with Woods and Waters Consulting. I'm a field liaison for the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. And I was just curious if you have worked with any NGOs who have worked to put Penvest funding on private farms, and if you could give any recent examples.
Well, I guess it depends if you consider a conservation district an NGO or not.
Sure,
We work with and have frequently with Chester Conservation District, Lancaster County Conservation District, Armstrong Conservation District to implement practices on best management practices on agricultural operations. We're helping fund a rain garden for the Armstrong County Conservation District. We've worked through with a consortium of partners in Armstrong Township, Lycoming County, for a wetlands remediation project they did there, where they swapped out some land with a farmer to get those marginal soils out of production and improve a stormwater area as well as a community park there. So yes, we've worked with NGOs to implement projects and have done that on a frequent basis. Actually, we just had 2 approved for Lancaster County Conservation District this morning.
Great. Thanks for sharing that.
Certainly.
any other questions? Thanks, Katie, for that question. Well, thank you, Robert, very much for joining us today. We're now here to talk about another funding opportunity, and that is the State Agricultural Cost Share Program. And I'm here to introduce Carl Brent. Carl.
Thank you, Denise. It's good to be here, and it's good to be in person for having done this in a long time. So appreciate the opportunity. Have a set of speaking notes that we use when we talk about ACAP up, and it's probably some of your best notes as far as just being able to understand the basics of ACAP. But ACAP is the Ag Conservation Assistance Program. This was a part of a Clean Streams Fund initiative that came through with the budget this year. Clean Streams Fund is a historic investment in non-point source pollution control. So it addresses a number of areas, including agriculture, as well as AMD and some other areas of non-point source. So we're excited about this as a part of the Clean Streams Fund. There was an allocation made to it during the budget cycle of $220 million from the federal ARPA funds. So the initial allocation of funds to the Clean Streams came from those federal funds at the level of $220 million. The Ag Conservation Assistance Program was also a part of the budget. It had enabling legislation, 5 or 6 different pages of enabling legislation that gave us the framework for the program, but that was also created as part of the current budget process. So we've had this language as an agency now since I think about second week of July. So we're working quick to take a look at this, how to implement this, and to stand it up as quickly as we can. Purpose of ACAP is to put ag best management practices on the ground. The State Conservation Commission is charged with the administration of the program, and one of the key functions of it is we can delegate duties and responsibilities down to county conservation district as well as other partners. ACAP is a part of the Clean Streams Fund. It's written in to receive 70% of any of the funding that's received by the Clean Streams Fund. So for this first allocation, the commission is slated at 154 million of the Clean Streams Fund to be able to dedicate towards ACAP. We also have an additional funding for our nutrient management line item through the current budget of an additional one-time supplement of $22 million that will also be beneficial and be used in conjunction with ACAP. So the hard stops on this, like all the other ARPA funding currently, are that we need to be able to commit this money by the end of 2024 and spend it by the end of 2026. So we're looking at standing up that 154 million rather quickly. Commission's duties and responsibilities for administering the program, they're all listed there, but basically we have a duty to develop the guidelines for the program, to allocate funding, to be able to designate the BMPs that will be eligible. And similar to REAP and Conservation Excellence Grants programs that we currently administer, looking to make those very similar to the NRCS standards and specs and practice codes. They're very close as far as the practices that are eligible, and where we can, the standards and specs will be the NRCS standards and specs. We do have a duty to develop training and outreach and technical assistance, and technical assistance is going to be a huge part of this. So we will have ongoing effort to be able to do some enhanced training and additional technical assistance, as well as we have duties to do quality control and to also report to the legislature. So great initiative, great opportunity, looking to stand this up quickly. One of the things that's unusual a little bit about this as we go into page 2 is where a conservation district chooses not to carry out this program at the county level, our commission will have to do it. So we're working closely to encourage the districts, as many as we can, to make sure they step up and do this and carry out the program. The allocations of this program are part of the enabling legislation. There are 4 criteria that are embedded in the enabling legislation that the commission has to consider, and that's agriculturally impaired stream miles in a county, cropland acres in a county, number of farms in a county, number of livestock and poultry in the county, as well as a provision that any other criteria that the commission would establish. Staff is currently recommending that the only other addition would be a minimum on the apportionment, and we'll talk about that in a little bit later. So conservation duties and responsibilities, basically, if they're going to carry it out on our behalf, they would enter into a delegation agreement. They would have to carry it out consistent with the guidelines that we provide for them, but they would be the ones entering into agreements with the landowners for the installation and design of these BMPs. We will also be responsible to oversee and to carry out the program at the county level. They do have authority if they want to, and we encourage them to form a local advisory committee. And the law does have some provisions there, but just to bring folks around the table to advise them on criteria and the program, there is the ability to do that. Basically, districts, when they receive these funds, which would be basically a block grant down from the commission, they basically have that to provide financial and technical assistance to anyone that would receive an ACAP award. And there's a couple of constraints that are on those dollars that go down to the districts. One is, as we give that funding to them, they have to spend that within 2 years from receipt. That's a part of the law. So the commission will be working to make sure that if we hand this money off to them, that they have the best opportunity to get that money on the ground within that 2-year time frame as possible. Districts also have a specific provision that they can use up to 6% for admin for the program at the local level. And the act is silent on technical assistance, but commission staff at this time is recommending for the commission consideration in November that additional 14% would be available for technical assistance for that program at the local level. Criteria for evaluation: as a district or commission or any agent of the commission would look at approving applications. The law does have provisions in there for what you have to consider for the evaluation. They're listed there, but one of the keys is that the BMPs have to be a part of a plan that the farmer has, whether that be a conservation plan, a nutrient management plan, a manure management plan. They have to have these BMPs as being something that's called for within their conservation or other plans that they're working on. We do give criteria or give priority to those practices that reduce nitrogen, phosphorus, and sediment. And we also have a requirement very similar to our REAP tax credit programs that if there are animal concentration areas on the farm, that they be addressed as a part of the plan or already have been addressed prior to the application. So there are criteria there, and as we get down the bottom of page 3, basically what I've talked about to date is the enabling legislation, and we've paraphrased the enabling legislation. So we move into page 4, some of the things that the commission is making decisions on as far as the implementation. One of the duties that we have is to make sure that we apportion and allocate the funding out. And you can read down through there, but basically we have about 141 million and change that will be block granted down through our county conservation districts. So out of that 154, about 141.68 million will be going down to the county conservation districts. We intend to apportion this once based on the formula for the funds that we currently have. And then we will then allocate that funding out to the districts based on the next 3 fiscal years. So there is a chart that we provided, I believe, or we can make available for the apportionments. If you run that formula based on the 4 criteria that we just briefly touched on, and put a $300,000 minimum on it, you'll look at Lancaster County receiving somewhere in the neighborhood of about 15.5 million. And then Chester County and other counties are close to that in the $5 to $6 million in Lancaster's allocation. And it would scroll down as you get to some of the farther reaches of county with less agriculture to a county like Cameron that would have a minimum allocation of $300,000. So that's the total over appropriation or apportionment of those funds. What we would plan to do with those funds as we block grant them down is to give them to the districts each year for the next 3 fiscal years. We would give them a third of that apportionment. So in Franklin County, for example, who's slated for about $6 million, between now and the end of the year, we'd be looking to move $2 million out to Franklin County. And then next year at this time, an additional $2 million, and 2 years out from now, we'd be looking at that third allocation of $2 million for a total of about $6.1 million to Franklin County. As we move this money out to districts, consistent with our Conservation Excellence Grants program and our Dirt and Gravel Roads program, which this program is very closely mirrored after, we'd be providing 50% working capital to the districts so they have the ability to pay bills when they come in. And then we replenish those funds as they expend them. So we apportion the dollars to give them an idea what's coming down the road in the next 4 to 5 years. And we allocate it out in 3 pieces to allow them to be able to commit and to spend that funding in a timely fashion. We do have an advisory committee that's listed there, and I won't go through, but it's conservation districts and NRCS and Penn State and other partners that have been active involved in this. And that group has met for about the last 2 months, every 2 weeks, to help us as we begin to stand this program up. And we just recently convened a technical assistance subcommittee of that to spend some dedicated time looking at technical assistance. Technical assistance at both the county and state level is going to be a very important thing. So that group spent last Friday morning starting to wade through and dig through some of the issues related to technical assistance. When we look at this money reaching the county level, there's basically 2 entities that can administer this funding at the local level. Either the Conservation District can choose to step in with a delegation. If they don't, the commission has to do that in that particular county. So the commission or its agents would have to administer that. So again, we're encouraging districts that are ready and able to do this to step up and take that delegation. But the commission does have that duty to be able to step in where conservation districts don't. As we look at this financial package, we think that as districts get this and look at the program, and they're currently talking about it, some of them may do this on their own. They may stand this up and run it on their own. Some may look to do this as a multi-county arrangement. Some may look to do this with other partners that they have at the local level, and we're certainly encouraging them to have ongoing discussions with NRCS to talk about how these funds can be layered and commingled and blended together to help make them work together in counties in Pennsylvania. So that opportunity to explore cooperative ventures with NRCS is certainly something that we encourage. We do know that a number of districts and NRCS folks are having those conversations at the local level. So putting on the ground is basically either the district or the commission serving in that capacity. For technical assistance, again, we provide the districts the administrative funding of 6% and the recommended allocation of 14% for technical assistance. So they can take that out of the money that's proportioned down to them. And again, there's going to be a couple of ways they can do this. Based on our experience with conservation excellence grants, we need to get flexibility. Certainly a program that's going to get $5 or $6 or $15 million is going to look different than one that's going to get $300,000 out of this. But districts can look to employ staff directly if they have the capacity to do that. They need to make sure that they'll have adequate capacity to be able to carry out these projects. They could work cooperatively with the private sector, and there are provisions in there to allow funding to flow to private sector if it needs to, or nonprofit partners, or again with NRCS, or perhaps even a combination of two or more of those types of approaches above. So technical assistance is huge. We're looking at this from a standpoint of NRCS does equip right around 30 million a year when you look at their averages. You take that 154 million and divide it by 5, it comes right out at 30-some million dollars a year to put on the ground. So we're looking at trying to stand up something similar in size and scope to what NRCS does in their equip. So it's going to be certainly a challenge. We do have the ability to hire some staff, and we're currently have positions that we're getting ready to post at the commission to be able to help us with this. I think most importantly, we're looking to have a discussion about how do we create some technical capacity in addition to just basic administrative capacity. How do we take some funding that we currently have with this opportunity, both in the ACAP funding and the nutrient management funding, and be able to create something in Pennsylvania that enhances the technical training capacities and the technical assistance capacities, and helps everyone that's putting ag BMPs on the ground to be able to have staff available and trained and equipped to go out and to be able to do this work. So it's going to be a challenge. We're sitting working on it right now. Again, we have to commit this money by the end of 2024, spend this money by the end of 2026. We're kind of running a fast pace right now, trying to get this stood up so that we don't lose any time in able to be able to do that. We've had a couple of webinars recently with the conservation districts and partners. I think we had 150 some people on the 2 webinars that we have. So there's a lot of discussion going on in Pennsylvania about this opportunity. How do we stand it up? How do we make it work with other programs? How do we staff it? And how do we sustain it over time? The other aspect of this is a one-time fund. That doesn't mean that we can't receive additional funds. But as we stand this up and as we have successes and we spend this money, we need to make sure that we're making the case about extending this beyond 2026 and beyond. So great opportunity, great challenge to have before us. Look forward to working with conservation districts as well as NRCS and other partners to make this work, and just working really hard to get this stood up and ready to go. So with that, I'll stop. And if there's any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them.
Do we have any questions for Carl?
Nothing that I saw in the chat there, Denise.
What's that, Tim? Sorry.
There was nothing in the chat.
So I have a question for Carl, and I think we've had a discussion. I had a disgruntled employee call me, and he said, Denise, folks from the conservation district can offer 90%, or they should, because the farm community is hurting right now. And my answer back to that person is really working with EQIP and ACAP. If the district choose, they could give 90% to the producer, having 75% being ACAP or 25% being NRCS, or vice versa. And so I think where we have talked about is a building block kind of approach. And I think that was my understanding, and I was, is that basically your understanding as well?
Yeah, we haven't seen anything that tells us that we can't commingle these funds and layer these funds. So where you have a producer who needs an additional incentive to go beyond perhaps what NRCS can offer. Certainly, I think there's an opportunity to, take that Lego piece and add it on and keep building it.
That's
As well as the opportunity for some practices. I know from the ACAP side, we're going to have to do the same thing at looking at what is it going to take to get producers ready to sign on the dotted line to make this happen. So this is one of the tools that the commission has. We also have CEG grants in 7 South Central states, 7 South Central counties. We also have AgriLink loans that can provide some low interest loans, and we have REAP tax credits. So with all these different resources, we ought to be able to find a way at the local level to get a producer to a point where they have a financial package that they feel comfortable with and allows them to make a decision to move forward and put this work on the ground. So hopefully it's kind of seamless and they don't necessarily know who's providing all the funding, but hopefully they get a package that gives that assurance and the incentive to be able to do this work.
And I think the only caveat from an NRCS perspective, we would use these certainly as building blocks. As Carl said, we just have to ensure from a federal perspective, the producers not being over 100% of the cost share. And I don't know if you have that similar requirement, Carl, or.
We may not have it written down, but we certainly don't look to be offering above and beyond what their cost would be.
So that's where our focus is. So just to give folks an update and just to answer that question. So, certainly we look to partner together on this project and address those questions. So, all right. Well, thank you, Carl. Any other questions from the members? Thank you, Carl. Lots of great opportunities for people to take advantage of. As Robert said, now is the time, right? If you don't take advantage of money now, that shame on you, because it probably won't come this way again. So certainly appreciate both partners speaking to us today, and really thank you for a broad and good overview. A little bit. I did want to touch base. I had some questions. Carl, did you want to talk a little bit about our technical assistance agreement that we have that we're going to move out together on?
Sure. We've been working that part of the year at least now and trying to enhance technical capacity, and NRCS approached the Department of Ag and the Commission about cooperative venture. And so we are partnering with NRCS to add five engineering positions on statewide. And the commission and the department will be supporting that as a quarter of that expenses. So there's a cooperative contract and venture there to begin to enhance engineering capacity. So a first step towards technical assistance capacity enhancement. But I think overall, what I would hope that comes out of ACAP in the long run of the next 5 years is a nucleus that begins to be tasked with and working on technical assistance and training in the long term, so that all the agencies can benefit by the training and the resources that we have, and be able to enhance them and offer them to more people on a more frequent basis. So this happens with boots on the ground, and boots on the ground need to have training. And how do we raise everybody's boat with this influx of funding? And I think that's going to be a great discussion about how we can create some type of a capacity to be able to enhance technical assistance in Pennsylvania.
Thanks, Carl. Appreciate it. All right, moving forward, getting over to our technical reports today. Tim Peters, our state conservation engineer. Tim?
Thanks, Denise. Exciting times in conservation. Kind of tough to follow ACAP talk. It's definitely exciting. Tim, Kenny, do you have my presentation that you can share?
It's coming up. We're just a little delayed.
I sure do.
Okay.
It's
Thanks.
up right now.
it's on.
Oh, okay, very good. Well, if you want to just jump to the next slide, I have a brief report to provide here. Some good info, but just a couple of slides. So if you jump to slide 2. And this slide is, I guess, an unfortunate slide to be sharing. The HPAI, the highly pathogenic avian influenza, hasn't gone away. In fact, it's come back. We had a break over summer, but we have had cases in Pennsylvania now, again with HPAI. So consistent with other state agencies, NRCS is back to suspending poultry visits. So we're going back to where we were in the springtime. We did this in February, and we were very conservative to our approach when it came to poultry operations. And we're in that same boat now this fall. And we're avoiding poultry as much as possible, but at the same time, work still needs to go on. And so we are considering projects that involve poultry that we're involved in that must require site visits on a case-by-case situation. And the field staff in those situations are working with myself and with the ASTCs for their area to get a game plan for how to handle those site-specific situations. In all cases, though, the landowners are involved. We don't go to any farms without having permission from the landowner and knowing that they want us on their farm so the project can continue. We're always avoiding the birds, avoiding the litter, and avoiding the mortality areas. There's not really a need for us to be in those locations. We have to work around them, and that's just part of our avoidance measures. If a staff member did need to go into a location where the birds are located, then we would be using disposable Tyvek suits, but that's a very infrequent situation, and avoidance is our first option in those cases. Now, I do have a couple more bullets here. Washing clothing, vehicles, and equipment. Now that's pretty easy in the summertime, but now that we're getting to cooler weather, it's important that we're washing our jackets and everything after visits, and maybe not something that's typically done, but a very important thing to be doing at this point. And any survey equipment that would be on site and any vehicles that are parked, we're trying to park away from the birds and mortality and litter areas as much as possible. But even at that, parking along the road, we're still having them washed following those site visits. And then practicing our regular biosecurity with our regular boot wash and disinfection process. And then finally, if a producer or if a staff member does need to go to a site where poultry exists or even backyard chickens would put us into this category, we would be avoiding other sites for 72 hours to avoid spreading that disease. We want to play our part in minimizing the impacts of HPAI, and I think everyone else is in the same boat. So Tim, next slide, please. Standards update. All of you received many emails from us over the past year, and I thank you for all of the comments we received back on the standards and the supporting documents that go along with them. We have 45 standards that are listed here, and those standards have been updated to PHOTOG. In almost all cases, it was cosmetic changes. We went through the process, though, to work through our area engineers first, and then to you as the state technical committee. And we do appreciate the comments we got back. We try to incorporate those as best we can. And so thank you for that. And the list of ones that have been updated is right here. So a lot of standards, a lot of work, and a lot of credit to a lot of people to make that happen. We still are going through just the way the process works. I don't have the ability to go through and look at the cosmetic parts of the documents ahead of time after I put it into our system. So we're still going through and making sure that spacing's okay and some cosmetic things are okay. So if you notice any issues like that with these documents, let me know and I can go in and fix that. But we're working through that quality assurance process. And so big thanks, though, for all the comments. Tim, next slide, please. Well, we did 45, but that's not the end. There's more engineering standards coming, and this is a list of, I think there's about 12 here, engineering practices that have been reviewed and released by our national office, by the National Handbook of Conservation Practices, and they are now available at the state level for Pennsylvania to go through our process, just like we did last year with those 45. We're going to do the same thing with a dozen or so that are listed here. So this is what you can be expecting to see this year from me on engineering practices that we're looking to update. And just to highlight a couple that are of maybe more interest than others: diversion, practice that gets used regularly, stream crossing, and vegetated treatment areas. So those are some big ones for us. And really appreciate comments that you have. If you have constructive comments that we can make these standards better, we want to do that. So definitely appreciate those comments. Most likely, I'll be sending these out in 3 or 4 groupings. I won't send them all at one time. I'll try to space them out and not overwhelm myself and everybody else with trying to do all of them at one time. So you'll likely see groupings of 3 or 4 at a time.
And just to say, Tim, this is part of a national mandate through the Farm Bill that says that NRCS needs to update all its standards from the 2018 Farm Bill. So this is happening, NRCS is implementing it. It's not meant to kind of swamp you all, but it was a request by Congress to make sure that all the standards were updated.
Yeah, good point, Denise. Thanks for sharing that. And it also isn't because we've had problems. It's just part of that mandate. And there will be more coming after fiscal year 23 too. So I think we have 70 some engineering practices. So I think there's 25, 30 or so more to go that we're just waiting on releases from the national office. But these 12 are what we think will happen this year. And one more slide, Tim, and actually it's just my closing slide, but I did want to mention on our watershed and rehab end of engineering here, we have started the planning process for a few more rehab projects. And one of those projects is Walker Lake in Snyder County. And then we have 5 dams on the Little Schuylkill, the Little Schuylkill dams in Schuylkill County. So all of these, we are kicking off the planning process here, and we are starting that process to rehab those dams, and that's several years in the making. But just to let everybody know, we are starting the planning process for 6 new dams this year, and that's exciting for us. That's a good thing for us. So that's what I had. Thanks, Denise.
Just a little bit, that is as a result of the infrastructure bill.
Yes.
So those 5 dams are as a result of the infrastructure bill. So we have existing program of watershed program that we are currently doing work in, and you hear many of those dams such as Beaver Dam and Hibernia Dam and others. But then on top of that existing program, those 5 were selected under the infrastructure bill to be funded. And so just a little bit of an update on that. NRCS is going to be creating a water resources engineering branch to handle that workload. And so that will be coming soon. Hopefully we'll have some advertisements pending within the next few weeks to advertise for a structural engineer and then branch planning leader. We already do have some folks already on staff who do that kind of dam rehabilitation work and watershed planning work, and that's Heather Smeltz and Mark Buckwalter, his primary focus is the Emergency Watershed Protection Program, but they'll also be lending their expertise to that team. So just to let you know that things are moving out. I often get questions, what did the infrastructure bill pay for? That those dams are those that are coming up, and they're all rehabilitation dams. So they're dams already in existence that we are just rehabbing. So and with that said, any questions for Tim going forward?
I have a brief question. How many dams do we have in Pennsylvania, more or less?
I think there's somewhere between 80 and 90,
Oh.
I
right?
think we had 89.
89.
Here. And it's a long, slow process to rehab them all. They were put together in the 60s and 70s, and so they're coming to the end of their lifespan, and we'll be rehabilitating them over the next, well, as long as I'm
Into
here. That's all.
perpetuity, yeah.
Denise, does NRCS own those dams, or are they owned by local partners?
They're owned by, the land rights have been acquired by the local sponsors, so most often cases, they were either conservation districts or county commissioners. So, and sometimes we have municipalities. such as Chester County has their Water Resources Authority that has those dams. They're the sponsor and they have the land rights. And we do some sponsors are PA Fish and Boat, which was the Snyder County Dam, as well as DCNO. Have a couple of those dams because they're not just, a lot of them were put in for municipal water supply, but they're also, and flood control, but some of them could be recreational as well, so. All right, well, thank you, Tim. Thank you for that update. Certainly appreciate it. Dan Ludwig today is in another meeting today, so we will not have Dan update. The only thing I do wanted to let you know is that we will be coming out with certified planner policy, probably in the next, within the next month. It has been approved by national office. We will be looking at that and reviewing that. Again, once with nationals comments, before it's posted, but just wanted to let folks know that, that's kind of the topic, for the, at least at this point, for, the ecological science team. And is there anything else? I know Jim is on today. Jim, do you have anything else you want to add from the ecological science side of the house? Okay, hearing nothing, then we'll go on. Yuri, you're up next for state soil scientist to give a
Okay.
little bit of a soils update.
I'm gonna try and share my screen because there's been a bit of a lag. Oh, that means now you guys can't see it in the room.
That's all right.
All right, okay. Yeah, there's just been a lag on the, and I'm afraid that the slides weren't advancing in the room here. So I'm just giving an update on the soil survey and web soil survey. This was similar to a presentation I gave a year ago. So this is, all right, hold on. All right, there we go. So this is per National Bulletin 430-22-4 that every year the soil survey data is refreshed. It is all refreshed. And October 1st, 2022, the switch was flipped. And so the data has all been refreshed and updated. So how will you know that the data is new? So you go to Web Soil Survey and you hit the start button. And in this case, I brought up Dauphin County as the area of interest, and you'll see under the area of interest properties, there's some dates available. So data available, tabular and spatial, and it will show you that we are now on version 18 and that the data was refreshed as of September 6, 2022. So that is the latest. The spatial data, however, is still the 2019. So the spatial data has not been changed since 2019 for Dauphin County. So whatever county you're in, when you bring up Web Soil Survey, you go to that area of interest table of contents and you'll see what the version of the data is. So most data changes you will not notice. It's mostly underlying tabular data that is being harmonized so that it is consistent across an area. So for example, Hagerstown soil here in Dauphin County will have similar data to a Hagerstown soil in Center County. So that's what's going on. That's been going on for about the past 10 years. Mostly you haven't seen it. But some of the highlights that did take place in 2021, Cameron, Elk, and McKean counties, they had the most edits done out of the Morgantown Soil Survey Office. They were updating mine soils and eudorthents and calling them, they were assigning actual soil series to them, Fairpoint and Bethesda soil series. And in addition to updating those, they were looking at areas that have been mined since the original publication of the soil survey. And my thing just switched on me. I didn't even do that, but okay. So just so you know what Fairpoint and Bethesda soil series are, these were our actual mine soils. They refer to surface mine, spoil pile, spoil bank, reclaimed land. Fairpoint soils are derived from non-acid material, neutral to calcareous shale, sandstone, siltstone. Bethesda soils are similar to Fairpoint, but they're derived more from acidic surface mine overburden. And for the most part, they are well drained. So why mine soils? Because a lot of mining has taken place since the original publication of these soil surveys. And so when we're trying to do programs, when we're trying to do Farmland Protection Policy Act evaluations, when we're trying to evaluate things for surface mining, if the area is out of date and the land use has completely changed, then the old soil survey maps don't help us very much. So that's why we are updating them. And then areas that were mined at the time of publication and were just called strip mines or Eudorthents, they really didn't have any data with them, so you couldn't assign any interpretations. And these areas can be useful for forestry, agriculture, and development. So it'll help our users if we assign soil series that can have interpretations. So if you want more information about the soil survey data that was updated for your specific county, go ahead and contact me and I can run a report and tell you which map units were touched with in the last year. And that's all I have, Denise.
And I think there was one question in the chat, Yuri.
Okay.
I see that.
All right, let me.
Basically, I think, is this website going to be updated like our state website?
Oh, not that I've heard. I think Web Soil Survey will stay looking like it is. Just the data has been updated.
Very good. Thank you.
Mhm.
And just to that point, so one of the other things that we received a lot of comments from in our strategic plan was the need to update our website and make it more user friendly. And we have to comply with the national website. So when we, within the state here, when things get updated, we are kind of have to be like all other 50 states. But with that said, some good news that as of Thursday this week, we will be updating our new website. So it will look new and clean and I think have a little bit more user-friendly access points. You won't have to be an expert or an NRCS employee to navigate the website, hopefully. So with that said, that's where we are. And I wanted to give folks a little bit of an update on that. Now moving on, thank you, Yuri, and appreciate that update. And thank you, Tim, for the technical updates. Today I have the opportunity to introduce to you Jared Shippey. Jared is our new Assistant State Conservationist for Programs. For those of you who may not know, Jared is the former Scott Heckman, who is out of Clayton County. He was a field person and he had the job for 2 years. And before Scott went to retire, the person was Barry Franks. So if you know, Jared is, most of you probably pre-COVID, he's the Barry Franks of, so Jared, I'll just turn it over to you and your team, and I hope you can introduce yourself.
Thanks, Denise. Do you guys hear me okay?
We can, and Jared is a mover and a shaker, and Jared not only was a supervisory district conservationist of one field team, but he was the supervisory district conservationist of 2 field teams. And so his field team stretched from Bedford to Potter County, all the way up the line. So he had a number of employees working for him. So Jared, just thought maybe I turn it over to you and you could give folks a little bit of your background.
Sure, and thanks, Denise. So as Denise mentioned, my name is Jared Shippey, and I am the new Assistant State Conservationist for Programs. So a little background on myself. I've been with NRCS for going on 18 years, starting as a soil conservationist and then moving into the supervisory district conservationist role. So I've been in a number of offices, most recently in Bedford County. So certainly looking forward to my new role, working with the programs team and the state office staff. I feel like this is a good time to start this role, being with the new opportunities that we have as far as funding levels and partnerships and things of that nature. So I'm very excited to kick off 2023 contracting season. So with that said, I think this year, given the fact that we're anticipating a large contracting year, the programs team and myself have been working on a very progressive timeline in order to roll out our 2023 programs. We're finalizing our new cost lists for 2023 as we speak. And also, we have set new timelines for program applications. So as of now, the first round for EQIP applications this year is going to be November 1st. And for CSP, it is going to be January 1st. And we're hoping to keep things moving and keep contracts getting out to the producers so they can put good conservation work on the ground and meet that June 30th goal of obligation deadline that we're hoping to set. And as Denise mentioned earlier, I have some gray hair now, but I'm trying to avoid any additional gray hairs. So we're certainly trying to get things rolled out ahead of time and keep things running smoothly. I can say that being in Bedford County, Carl had mentioned that they had some CEGs in some of the south central counties of the state. Bedford was fortunate enough to be one of those counties. So we worked from the field office level very closely with the conservation district in order to partner with some of those funds. So I certainly have a lot of experience with partnering with different organizations. I appreciate Robert and Carl's presentations, and I look forward to reading, as Denise mentioned, our local work group meetings. We're kicking those up a little bit this year and want them done by the end of the calendar year. And I'm looking forward to getting those minutes from those meetings and getting some ideas about different ways that local field offices and conservation districts and other partners are looking to partner in order to best utilize this influx of funds that we're all receiving. So I think that everybody pulled together last year, late in the fiscal year, and got spent a lot of the additional funds that we were fortunate enough to receive. And I don't want to steal the program managers' presentations because I know they want to highlight some of the great work that we all did together last year. But it's good to be here and look forward to working with you all. And if anybody has any questions or wants to reach out to me, they're more than welcome to. Thank you. I'll turn it over to Ryan then.
Good afternoon. And do you guys have my slides? If not, I can pull them up and share.
We could be a little slow.
Okay.
I have them here, Brian.
Yep, sounds good.
Hopefully you can see the screen here shortly.
There's just a bit of a lag time, so
Yep,
Ryan, you
understood.
can get moving.
Yep, I'll start, and eventually the slides will populate here. But anyways, yes, thank you. I'm Ron Cornelius. I'm the EQIP program manager. I help run EQIP and AMA. So in 2022, FY 2022, we had a very good year. We ended up contracting 437 EQIP contracts for over $29 million. In AMA, we ended up getting over $540,000, and we were able to write 36 contracts. And I know Adam will be covering RCPP, but in the older RCPP EQIP fund codes here, we were able to do 6 more contracts for $962,000. But really good year. The field offices pulled together here at the end. We ended up getting some extra dollars here later in the year. We were able to get those spent, and but yeah, looking forward to FY23 and being able to move a little quicker and wrap up sooner, hopefully. But then just going to highlight some of our EQIP initiatives from this past year as well. It's not all the different fund codes, but just going to highlight some of them. Our Golden Wing Warbler initiative, we were able to fund 28 contracts totaling over $1 million. The CCI program, the Cover Crop Initiative program. This was a new initiative that was thrown at us earlier in the year last year. $1 million. We ended up contracting just $87 shy of that. So for 38 contracts, the conservation incentive contracts, CIC, we were able to do 24 contracts for over $906,000 there. We were able to fund everybody who ended up applying for that particular, all eligible high and medium applications. We were able to fund with those. Our urban conservation initiative, we ended up with 3 contracts for $21,000. We hope to have more applicants this year to be able to do more good work in those urban areas. And then in organic, we ended up with 4 contracts totaling $27,000 under that initiative. But and then the next slide, please. So yeah, Jared mentioned about for FY23 our EQIP, AMA, and RCPP sign-up deadlines. So first round sign-up is going to be November 1st. So if anybody's looking to get applications in, that's now's the time. And then every 2 months after that is the next round cutoff. And that then also coincides with when applicants need to get their eligibility into us. But yeah, that is what I got here for EQIP and AMA, unless anybody has any questions.
Yeah, this is Bob Hartman. I put a question in the chat. Ryan, of the 473 EQIP projects, do you happen to know how many of those were like forestry versus the more agricultural ones?
So of those slides, if we were to, and if you can go back to the slides with the different initiatives, so that would pull up the, so all the Golden Wing ones would have ended up being,
right, but that's a separate, that's a separate program from the core.
Correct, but those would have been forestry, and then as far as I don't have an exact number here, but I can put I'll look them up here, and I can put a number in the chat as far as number of contracts that were forestry related.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. But otherwise, that is what I got. Unless there's other questions. If not, we can move on to. If I don't know if Ashley's next or who's next. But.
I'm on.
Okay, Ashley, you can. Yep.
Hey, I'm presenting here. You should be able to see my screen. Just wanted to talk to you a little about the programs that I oversee. I'm Ashley Lennon, Conservation Program Manager in the state office.
Just a little bit of a lag time.
There we go. Hopefully that advanced for you. My outline here, I'm going to talk about fiscal year 2022 accomplishments for Conservation Innovation Grants, Conservation Stewardship Program, as well as National Water Quality Initiative, which is under EQIP, the Environmental Quality Incentives Program, and then talk to you a little bit about the fiscal year 2023 activities that we have underway at the moment. So here are the Conservation Innovation Grants we were able to fund at the end of fiscal year 2022. We had 4 new CIG agreements totaling a little less than $300,000. They were with the Water Science Institute for a Legacy Sediment 3.0 project. The Nature Conservancy for a little less than $72,000. That's for a certified prescribed burn manager program. With Capital Resource Conservation and Development Area Council for a little less than $74,000, and that's for monitoring carbon sequestration for carbon credit development. And the last one here, Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University for $75,000, and that's assessing opportunities for on-farm bioenergy systems to enhance nutrient, carbon, and energy management options for poultry farmers in Pennsylvania. I have a few more details on those on the next slide here. With the Water Science Institute project, that's to examine opportunities and challenges that repurposing legacy sediment might have being used in environmental justice communities. So they're looking specifically at some focusing on counties with environmental justice communities as determined by Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. The Nature Conservancy is looking to develop a 3-day certified prescribed burn manager training workshop, which would be used to promote safe and effective private lands burning. Capital RC&D wants to demonstrate the use of a soil probe to continuously monitor soil organic carbon, NP and K, soil moisture, and soil temperature on a real-time basis. And then Virginia Tech is looking into the system economics of on-farm bioenergy systems. That is, they believe, a knowledge gap, which is preventing that from being adopted more frequently. So we're excited to be to have those new projects coming in this year. CIGs are typically 3-year grant agreements, and the hope is that we can, or the idea is that we get something out of these agreements that we can roll into our standard specs and the way we do things to spread across the ag community. Next, I want to talk about Conservation Stewardship Program. So our total new CSP contracts that we funded in fiscal year 2022 were 225 for a little over 10 million on a little over 92,000 acres. And those consist of contracts that we renew another 5 years. So renewal contracts are existing CSP contracts that would like to continue, and they have to meet criteria about further enhancing and protecting the resource concerns on the landscape. So we did 69 of those for 3.2 million on over 28,000 acres. Then we have the CSP Grassland Conservation Initiative. We only did one of those for a little more than 1,000 acres. And that's looking at a payment for grassland, the folks that have grassland bases with the Farm Service Agency to maintain land and grassland. And then our CSP Classic, or our Standard Conservation Stewardship Program, is 155 acres for a little over 7 million on close to 64,000 acres. So that's what we did for Conservation Stewardship Program in fiscal year 2022. Also wanted to touch on, I know Ryan talked about Environmental Quality Incentives Program, but specifically the National Water Quality Initiative. We have 5 watersheds in the state of Pennsylvania that fall into that initiative. We funded 19 new contracts in those areas for $1.7 million on over 2,000 acres this past fiscal year. Swatara Creek and Maiden Creek are our source water protection pilot NWQI areas, and we funded 6 contracts in each of those. You can see the money and the acreage is affected there. Then we did 3 in Warrior Run, 2 in Upper Kish, and 2 in Beaver and Upper Yellow Creeks in Western PA. I do keep showing the map just so you can see where those are located, spread across our state there a little bit. And then what we're working on currently, or what I'm working on currently with our staff across the state, is CSP renewals. So folks that wanted to renew existing contracts have to do that before they expire. So we're currently assessing and ranking the applications we got in for those. We have an obligation deadline getting close to the end of the year, but it's December 16th. And then the same with CSP Grassland Conservation Initiative, or CSP GCI, that's the same obligation deadline. And then with CSP Classic, we're going to start working on deciding what we'd like to have for our enhancements. Just got the national list of enhancements today. And so we're going to have an earlier timeline for fiscal year 2023, and we look to have those obligated by 6/30 of 2023. So that's all I have, unless there are questions or comments for me. Thanks for
Any
listening.
questions or comments for Ashley? Okay, that said, we'll keep moving on. Jim Gillis, you're here to talk about PREP.
maybe Adam Dellinger.
No, all right. Doesn't appear Jim is on. Moving on, we'll go to Adam Dellinger.
Okay, very good. Thanks. I will go ahead and share my presentation, Tim. Hopefully it loads fairly quickly. But yeah, good afternoon, everyone. My name's Adam Dellinger, and I'm the RCPP program manager for Pennsylvania. And just wanted to take this opportunity today to give a very quick update on RCPP activities in Pennsylvania. So just in case you aren't familiar with the program, RCPP is a program that allows the agency to cooperate with partners to implement land management contracts, so like implementing BMPs or conservation easements. And these activities are carried out in ways similar to other programs you're probably familiar with, like EQIP and CSP, like we've talked about, and then ACEP being our easement programs. So a little summary for fiscal year 22, total new RCPP producer contract obligations across all the active RCPP projects was roughly $5.3 million over 30 total contracts. Of those 30, 6 of them are from our old Farm Bill 14 RCPP projects at almost $1 million. Ryan touched on that in his presentation a little bit. And then the other 24 contracts were as a result of our newer Farm Bill 18 RCPP projects, totaling about $4.3 million. So in total, that brings total active contracts for RCPP across the state to a value of about $12.7 million for contracts that are being implemented right now. For the older Farm Bill 14 projects, we have about 62 active contracts being implemented as we speak across 10 counties in the state. Now, for those older projects, they are starting to expire and run out of funding. So we don't anticipate awarding any more contracts for landowners moving forward. Instead, we'll just be focusing on implementing what's already been contracted. For the Farm Bill 18 RCPP projects, we have about 35 contracts that are active right now across 3 counties, Armstrong, Berks, and Lancaster. That work will continue and grow as time goes on. We have several projects that are just getting started now, and this is the first year that we had any contracts as a result of those projects. So there's several more years of contracts to be made just from those projects alone. Now, looking ahead for fiscal year 23 and land management contracts, as Ryan already indicated, we have a first round contract application cutoff date of November 1st. That's the same for EQIP and AMA and RCPP contracts. Second round cutoff date will be January 1st, and it'll follow that pattern that Ryan already shared in his presentation. And just generally speaking, there are active RCPP projects that cover a lot of counties, Chesapeake Bay, all the Chesapeake Bay counties, plus Armstrong, Allegheny, and Butler. So landowners that are interested in those areas, feel free to encourage them to contact their local field offices to find out more, find out if those projects might be a good fit. Now, switching gears a little bit, I just wanted to let everyone know that I'm pleased to announce that we have some new RCPP projects in Pennsylvania to talk about. In the last couple months, USDA announced 41 brand new RCPP projects nationwide that are funded with fiscal year 22 funds. Of those 41, 2 of those projects are located in Pennsylvania and will work towards implementing best management practices and securing farmland preservation easements across the state. The first project is farmland preservation and climate change mitigation. The lead partner for that project is PDA, specifically the Bureau of Farmland Preservation. This is a statewide project, and the total award was almost $8 million. The goal of this project is to preserve farms and also install climate smart practices and systems that build soil health. In addition, they'd like to help transition producers to organic production. Second project I wanted to share about it's called the Implementing a Strategy to Rapidly Restore Agricultural Impaired Streams in Central Pennsylvania. And the lead partner for this project is the Chesapeake Conservancy. Total project award was nearly $10 million. The targeted project area for this project is Lycoming, Union, Snyder, Clinton, Center, and Huntington counties. And this project will again help implement conservation practices that will address water quality and wildlife habitat concerns for 18 streams that are currently listed as impaired under the Clean Water Act. So over this winter, NRCS will work with these partners to finalize project agreements, and hopefully we'll be able to get work started early next year. So on the topic of RCPP projects, we are working with partners on ramping up the work for another project. This one's called Healing Mine-Scarred Landscapes via Restoration RCPP project. This one was recently awarded in last year or the year before possibly, and we've just got the project agreement signed. We're starting to get some work done on this. Now, the primary goal of this project is to preserve and restore former mine lands. NRCS funds that are contributed to this project will be used for invasive species removal, reforestation activities, while the project partners will work to establish easements on these lands and develop opportunities for a carbon credit market using these reforested areas. To start, the geographic focus will be on Western PA, but we have the potential to move more statewide as the project goes forward. So if there's any landowners out there that might be interested in something like this, they should contact one of the project partners, Qualified Ventures, to find out more information. I included a link in the slides here. Hopefully it comes through on the handouts if you're interested in looking at that. If you have any questions about how to get a hold of them or questions about this project, of course, feel free to let me know. And just speaking about thinking forward about any other project ideas for RCPP that maybe your organization is interested in exploring, I expect information for the 2023 project application round will be coming out late this fall. Now, there are a lot of details that go into creating a successful RCPP proposal, but I just thought today I would just touch on one thing to maybe think about in case you're considering this. And that is the fact that there are two fund pools available for RCPP proposals. 50% of the funds that go to these projects go to statewide or multi-state projects, and the other 50% go to projects that are going to be dedicated to focusing on critical conservation areas or CCAs. And whichever fund pool you want to target is going to be an important decision when developing your project idea. So it's just worth noting that projects with a focus on those CCAs might be a little bit more competitive. And in Pennsylvania, we have two CCAs, and both of them have the same conservation focus. We want to address inadequate habitat and water quality degradation. So our two CCAs, one, of course, is Chesapeake Bay, and the other one is a part of the Great Lakes region, which is a very tiny sliver in the northwest corner of the state. On this map, it's a little blue sliver there. So again, just wanted to put that out there. We're a little maybe early, but if you're thinking about this could just be food for thought on how to structure a future proposal. Again, late fall or maybe even early winter, I expect more information to be available, and I'll be updating this committee with that announcement whenever it is available. So in the meantime, if you have any questions about RCPP, here's my contact information. Please feel free to let me know.
And just to add on to Adam's comment, we do have an RCPP that is currently enrolling conservation easements along the Kivetson Ridge too. So there's a lot of nearly $40 million worth of easement acquisitions that's occurring there along the ridge in that RCPP. So there's not only producer contracts, but also conservation easements. So any producers that want to work with us in either of those two ways, that's an opportunity. Any partners that would be interested. So
yeah, Denise, did you want, speaking of easements, did you want me to share the easement team's presentation as well, or did you want to keep that save that for another meeting?
You can, if there's an update you'd like to give, that's fine. Adam, that would be fine.
Okay. Yeah, they prepared one and asked me to present it if I wanted, so. go ahead and work on sharing that.
Thank you.
Sure. So yeah, no one, fortunately, the entire easements team is unavailable today, so I'm gonna fill in and give a real quick update for them as well. And we'll touch a little bit on RCPP easements as well during this talk. So we'll start out though with ASAP ALE, which is our standard easement ag land easement program. We had for 2022, we had 6 new ALE farmland preservation enrollments. This resulted in obligations, it looks like, of around $560,000 completed during the last fiscal year, representing 550 acres of additional preserved land in Pennsylvania. Now on this list, the totals that are shown are the first 6 parcels. The last 3 actually are not included in these totals because the funding was not fully obligated. So those will roll actually into 2023. Continuing on talking about the ALE easements. Now, in terms of parcels that were closed, 4 easements closed in 3 counties during 22 in Butler, Lancaster, and Lackawanna counties. So this preserved 232 acres in Pennsylvania, and looks like the NRCS contribution was around $280,000 for those 4 parcels. Now to talk a little bit about opportunities for easements under the RCPP projects that are currently ongoing. Specifically, this slide speaks to enrollments through the Kittatinny Ridge RCPP project. Looks like we've had 3 preservation, pre-farmland preservation easements in Cumberland and 1 forested easement in Franklin County submitted last year. This is a total of 443 acres with a funding request of $580,000. Now, none of these have been obligated yet, as either the application and approval process is ongoing, but they are in the queue. For RCPP parcels that had, or easements that had closed, looks like we had 1 easement in Adams County that closed under the PDA-led RCPP project, implementing conservation on Pennsylvania Preserve Farms project. So this easement preserved 214 acres of farmland. Moving on to new funding opportunities for easements. Now, earlier this year, there was an opportunity for additional special funding for ASAP ALE for potential easements located in counties within the Chesapeake Bay. We received 4 applications for the total of 414 acres. That looks like it was roughly $1,000 in financial assistance requests. I believe these applications are in process as well. Now, additional funding that's coming up for fiscal year 23, we're anticipating over $1 million in ASAP ALE funding for fiscal year 23. In addition, a little over $500,000 for WRE, which is our wetland easement program. And it looks like $250,000 or so for stewardship activities, which would be things like maintenance or repair activities on WRE easements. So, this represents a total of over $1.8 million in financial assistance that we expect for easements in 23. For new applications, we're looking at a cutoff date of December 30th, 22. Earlier, we touched on briefly about enrollments under the Kittatinny Ridge RCPP project. So just as we talk about available funding, I think we just want to share the fact that there is $6 million available for entity-held easements under this RCPP project. So as with the regular ASAP program, we're accepting applications now and with the cutoff date of December 30th, 22. If you have any questions or are interested in learning more about opportunities under the Kittatinny Ridge RCPP project, please contact Stephanie Zimmerman at PDA, and her email is there. And it looks like that was it. Are there any questions about easements?
Just for clarification, that $6 million is NRCS money, but the state has a lot, as well as the counties have a lot of other money. So match with that. So great opportunity for migratory flyway area. So thank you. Thank you, Adam. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Okay, with that said, do we have any questions or comments in the chat? I believe that Ryan Cornelius did highlight over $2.1 million that went in EQIP for 86 forestry contracts. So I think there was a question by a member, and that's the information. So thank you, Ryan, for pulling that information. With that said, any other comments, questions for before we end? I want to just extend a big thank you to two members who are retiring. They have been partners with us for many years, at least since I've been here as state conservationist, many more than that. Carl Brown, who's sitting next to me, is the Executive Secretary for State Conservation Commission. It's been a pleasure and an honor working with Carl for a little over, I guess it would be 12 years, Carl. So very much a mentor and as well as a great partner and a supporter of NRCS. So thank you, Carl. And then news today that also Curtis Schreffler with USGS that we've had the opportunity to work with for a number of years. Curtis has also been always here and always present at the state technical committee meetings. And so really want to thank Curtis for his support. And there's Curtis on TV. Or on the computer screen. So Curtis, thank you for all your good work. And because of that, we have a couple great super gauge stations setting up. Looking forward to measuring the outcomes of that in Lancaster and Lebanon counties. So thank you, Curtis.
Sure, Denise. It's been a pleasure. It's been a long time. I was cleaning out my office and I found notes for this meeting that were like from the mid 2000s. So it's been great working with NRCS in this. And yes, those super gauges are they're going to be doing good things long after I am gone. So thank you for your support with that, Denise.
Thank you. Very much appreciate that. And Carl, thank you for everything. So with that said, we will adjourn today. Our next meeting, if you can believe it, is in January. We're already talking January dates. It will be Thursday. Appreciate folks being here in person. We had Grant from Farm Bureau here and Chris Sigmund from TMAG, as well as Carl. So it was great to see in person. So please don't, we would welcome you to come in person. It's always good to see people in person, and but also have a virtual option that we're going to continue to have. And I see somebody's hand is up.
Yeah, Shuri, it's me. It's Demka from Philadelphia Food Advisory Council. I just want to real quick.
Hi, Demka.
Hi. Through the co-agreement or cooperative agreement, whatever, sub-award, however y'all doing these things. I'm still learning about this. Philadelphia Food Advisory Council will be working on a conservation district push for the next 2 years. That co-op agreement has myself and other committee people kind of lending a hand. We're designing a Black and Brown urban agriculture conference about sustainability. We're still in the planning stages for July next year, 2023. So if there's anyone interested from NRCS or any other Black and Brown farmers within Pennsylvania that would like to have a tour or a virtual something, or just to say, hey, we're here, please get them my information, my email if possible, or information to the Philadelphia Food Advisory Council.org. We're trying to make this a very inclusive and intersectional event. So just putting that out there. Just, if you know anyone or anyone is interested, just let me know. Thank you.
And Dimka, if you have a handout that you would like to provide us, we're more than happy. Ted can share that with the state technical committee members. So happy to provide any handouts or information on that summit.
Okay. Well, we're meeting on October 25th, so hopefully I'll have something before the next meeting.
Thank you. All right, very good. All right, with that said, going once, twice. Thanks, everybody. Have a good evening, and we'll talk to you soon.